Cool. I can edit out different stuff. So awesome. So I went on your Facebook profile because I like doing my research last minute. I didn't know that you studied psychology at Liberty University.
Yes. So I think you have that in common, don't you?
Yeah. Did you do the online program or did you actually go to the
It
school?
online.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I like the online program because I'm an introvert. So just kind of, it met the need.
Yes. Wait, fascinatingly, I like the online version because I'm an extrovert, and it also met the need to not get me distracted with the people in the classroom and all that. So uh, on the other end of that spectrum,
Have you been to the actual school?
I did it. There was like graduation. I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm fine without. So yeah, I've never been to Virginia. Have you?
Okay. I lived in Virginia for about a year, and then I went to the university just to look around, and it's a nice school. It was like, oh, I wouldn't have mind going there. So
Oh, nice.
cool. So I saw that you were on the John Maxwell team. I guess what does that consist of?
Right. So it was just a certification. To put it, I tease about it because it looks better than what it is. It's one of the certifications out there where you put money forward and you get certified. So not necessarily a bulk of mandatory training, but a lot of the training and the educational tools they're practical in nature. So it's like how to build a business, but it's not. You get certified long before you do really anything. So in some ways, that brand it's associated with having the thousands of dollars to put forward to receive the certification.
Gotcha. You have a favorite John Maxwell book?
Oh man, I could go on and on this question. Probably the game. I mean, I'll put the 15 invaluable laws of growth. That one, I cling to it as a coach and as a speaker because it hits on a variety of principles in the growth in the self-development industry. It just hits in a number of areas. So probably that one, 15 invaluable laws of growth.
Hmm. I have always enjoyed. I think my favorite one. There's a couple, but the one that really stood out was "Everyone communicates, few connect." That
Mm-hmm.
one, that one was good because it
Yes.
really taught me the importance of connecting more so than
Oh
just
yes.
saying and sounding
Right.
good.
Right. I mean, if you're looking for a communication book, you're looking for a book on speaking in public, and just enhancing that component. Yeah, that's one of the books that I put a rich endorsement for.
Quick question about the self-development industry. I interviewed Marcy Miller a couple weeks ago, and she's in kind of the self-development industry as well. And she was talking about how that industry is just so flooded to where it almost seems like it's kind of noisy. And so people don't really know, like, okay, which program should I do? Who should I listen to or whatnot? Do you find that to be the problem from what you've been involved with?
Well, um, it's fascinating. I think it's mindset, right? To me, it's a mindset. My mom, like, I'll tell you a story, right? So when, like, years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I said, you know what? I'm gonna start a landscaping business. And my mom, and you probably don't know my mom, but her story, she has like whatever 13 homes in San Antonio, a mobile home park, 4 daycares, a couple of shops. She's tried a tax business, a nail salon, a roofing business, a landscaping business, a plumbing business, and I'm probably forgetting like a dozen. But anyway, so the story goes that I want to start a landscaping business. My mom already had one, but my mom had the abundance mentality, which was like, there's always, like, even in the same city, there's more work than there are laborers, and similarly in this industry of self-help and professional development, I think um, there's just so many people. I mean, 7 billion people, right? I mean, I can't serve them all. So but there is. I mean, if you could look up a self-development on really any topic, from finances to romance to emotional mental wellness to your relationships with your peers to health and fitness. I mean, you pick a topic, you can find a podcast for it, you can find books for it, and so there is a ton of content out there. But for me, the mindset is not that it's overcrowded. I feel like I keep finding new people who want to jump on board, which is exciting and encouraging as a business owner.
Hmm. Yeah. I think maybe people have so many problems in their life, they don't know which problem to focus on first. And so maybe that's the overwhelming feeling they think, or.
Yes. You just hit like my tagline of coaching, because my thing is the tagline is narrow your focus to expand your impact, right? So if you're trying to do too much too soon, you're probably having too little results. But if you narrow your focus on one specific area, any potential, like I call them a life pillar, like finance is a life pillar, you might have anywhere from 25 to 30 sub principles underneath that, but you just focus on one action, or your first action or your next action, just at a time. And it's amazing to see people blossom just focusing on one action at a time. But you're right. So some people don't know where to start. They don't have somebody who's navigating them, which is where me as a coach, as a trainer, comes in and asks questions, helps them to evaluate and assess their life and look at where they might want to focus.
Do you have a hierarchy as far as things that someone should focus on first before they start focusing on other things? Do you have like a primary focus hierarchy and then a secondary?
I mean, I pull from other people, but for me, it's not necessarily my hierarchy, because the way I describe coaching, it's 90% client centered, and they're coming up with what they want to focus on. So I might in my mind say, ooh, you should focus on spirituality because spirituality touches everything, and just go there, it goes to the spirituality. But I firmly believe in the concept. I believe Dale Carnegie said it: a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And the idea is, like, stop trying to convince people to work on what you want them to. Let them work on what they want to work on. I have things for sure where I'm like, ooh, if you just figured out relationships, or you just figured out how to think for success, like, your whole world would change. But it's not as easy as, so I'm not in the business of prescribing, here's what you got to go do. It's most of the time of drawing it out of them. What do you want to do next in your finances? Are you focusing on the spending game, the saving game? Are you focusing on the investing game? Which avenue of investing? So for me, it's almost like mentally, it's a number of drop down menus as you continue to navigate the experience with them. But I also is a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's relevant. It's relevant, but still, it's still whatever they want to focus on first, and help them get some early victories. That gives them the confidence to look back and see what they've already done. So.
Cool. I'm excited to talk to you. I think maybe we both agree there is a leadership crisis in our country, maybe at different levels with different situations or whatnot. So I'm excited to be able to kind of hear your thoughts on leadership. Very popular topic, lots of books out there, but if someone's able to get a different perspective or a different kind of viewpoint of leadership, I think this conversation will be super beneficial to them. Of all the years you've studied this topic of leadership, have you come up with a very a definition that you're comfortable with of like what is leadership, or are you one of those people that has like a paragraph long definition of leadership because it encompasses so much?
It has one word, only one word: influence. Leadership is influence. If you think you're leading somebody and you're not influencing them, then you're not leading. So you take out the influence, you take out the leadership. You insert the influence, you insert the leadership. So that's like, it's a small thing. When I look at an organization and they have somebody who's organizing the happy hour afterward, maybe that they don't have a leadership role at all. They're not a supervisor, not a manager, but they're that guy on the team who organizes people to go to the bar and have a drink after work, I'm saying whatever that guy's doing to connect and build relationships, it's working because he's effectively getting 3-4 coworkers to go with him to the bar for happy hour. So I think leadership is influence.
Mm. And there's definitely a difference between a manager and a leader. Would you say a manager can force someone to do something, and a leader is definitely more on the influence side?
Well, right. I mean, and I've been in those positions where if you like study like some of John Maxwell's content, he calls that first level positional leadership, where people follow you because of your position, like they have to. And I've had that position where they didn't listen, they get written up. You know, if they don't follow the direction, they go from a first written to a final written to a termination. And so people, that's the lowest tier though of leadership. They follow you because they have to. But I've seen people, rely on their title or their status. I mean, it's funny. I'll give you another perspective, even like from a Christian faith perspective. I remember when I first read about it as a guy who, I didn't grow up in a faith-based background, but I remember first reading about it, like, the somewhat crazy concept. It said, wives submit to your husband. So I was like, oh, well, that's fascinating. I remember asking a guy about it, and I was asking a married guy about it. I was like, man, I said, this must be easy for you. All you have to do is say something, and she does it. But he was like, no. He corrected that quickly. He said, look, if you have to lean on your position or your authority, you've already lost in the game. And I think there's something powerful about that. Of course, being in the faith background, and like I know now, 7 years into the married game, my role isn't to boss her around or to command her. And if that's what I'm resorting to, I've probably already lost in the connection. So that's the lowest tier of leadership, is people follow you because they have to, not because they want to, not because of what you produce, not because of what you've helped them with, and certainly not because of who you are.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about maybe character for a second. The saying, before you lead others, you have to lead yourself. I guess, in what ways do you lead yourself in your day-to-day life?
Oh yeah. So I'm big on habits, and if you show me the quality of your habits, I say I'll show you the quality of your life, right? So then it kind of depends on what kind of habits we're cultivating on a day-to-day basis. So some habits are natural for us. Some of us, I mean, hopefully all of us, after we go to the restroom, we flush the toilet, wash our hands. Those are like natural habits. Like those are ingrained. And other habits aren't so natural, right? Like for me, and one area that was a weakness is I would neglect health. I would neglect fitness, because in a leadership role for years, you never run out of responsibilities. There's always something. The way I describe it, it's you have about 70 things to do, but you only have time for about 40. So choose wisely. But the problem with neglecting health and fitness for a long periods of time is you can't delegate that to anybody else. I can't delegate it to a friend, a coworker, to give me the right foods. I guess I could hire a chef or something like that to make it a little bit easier, but still it's my responsibility to put the food in my mouth, or the drink in, put the drink in. I'm sending a fitness. I can't pay somebody to work out for me. Like I actually have to get on the field and do it myself. I have to go for the runs or hit the weight room. But for me, it's looking at, so I talk about the 14 life pillars, and in those, I'll give you a quick little review, but it's financial, romantic, emotional, mental, social relationships, health and fitness. Then I talk about the spirituality, impact on the community, physical health, immediate family, extended family, your career and your profession, your recreation or relaxation, your effectiveness and time management, and your values. So there's 14 of them. And if I'm going to help somebody from a coaching perspective, the big thing is, how am I doing navigating those personally? So for me, again, I neglected health and fitness. Now, just 2 months back, got into the vegetarian game. June 1st, got into the vegan game. So I'm doing the vegan thing now. purifying like my drink. So I'm striving to not drink Coca-Cola and Big Red and more water. Um, but but it's those small things of building the habits that make an impact. And so for me, it's like leading myself is looking at those 14 life pillars. What can I do to make an impact? Even the book, you know, that the book I wrote, that was the result of the habit of writing every single day. And that's just leading myself, right? Like, again, nobody can write the book for me unless I could pay a ghostwriter or something like that. But like, nah, you know what? I can do this. So for me, it's just about what habits are paramount, and knowing how to build habits and inserting those into my day to day.
Is it challenging writing a book as an extrovert? Because I know a lot of introverts have the ability to lock themselves in a room, sit down, and get it done. As an extrovert, did you find it more difficult to be disciplined and being able to just sit down and do it, or?
Right. So I tease that like Ariel, the Little Mermaid, you know, she's singing under the sea, like, I want to be where the people are. That's the extrovert singing, you know, that's like all the time. I want to be where the people are. I want to be with meeting with people, interviews like this, podcasting on my own podcast. And, but just saying like, it's just breaking it down to small chunks. Like, I don't have to write for 4 hours every day. It might be 2 sentences. Like, now understanding that a book like this might have took 150 hours. Now, if I only want to devote 10 minutes a day, that's going to be a long time. But if I did get to an hour, it'd take a little less than half a year. If I did 30 minutes, you know, it's getting closer and closer to a year. But it was, to answer your question, it was getting time away from people to write, but then motivated by the number of people that I'm striving to help. Because some people ask me, well, there's a lot of marriage books already. Why write a book on marriage? And I was like, well, here's the thing. Some people will read my book, not because they're looking for a marriage book, because it's me. My name's on it. I have friends and family members who will pick up the book because I gifted them the book. And how pivotal is that to have an impact on somebody's marriage? Not because they were looking for a marriage book, but because people are willing to be influenced by what I have to write about.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good like bridge to the content that you want them to consume, versus the other content that a lot of people do consume, which is social media, the news, just a lot of junk food out there that a lot of people are consuming at the moment. So
Right.
As far as this kind of quick thing about the habits, I read a really good book, Atomic Habits, and he mentioned about the author of the book mentioned about how a lot of athletes, they'll look at something and say, okay, how can I make it 1% better? How can I make my sleep 1% better, my exercise 1% better, my eating habits 1% better? Because that, I guess, helps not overwhelm them, and the natural outcome is they just end up having a better life at that. So like what you said about kind of small chunks, whether it's just 2 sentences a day, but the reality is if you only did 2 sentences a day, you'd probably be on the first, I imagine you'd probably be on the first chapter of your book, but.
Yeah. What's fascinating is that book is what when I'm talking about my habit philosophy, I'm talking about everything in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. So that's my go-to. If somebody wants to talk to me about habits, I'm like, hey, I'll train you on habits. Pick up that book, join one of my growth groups, and we'll dive right into that right there. But he as I was writing the book, he actually there's an illustration he puts up, like few words, sentence, paragraph, section, chapter, book, like that's the process, and that's the way I approached it. And really trying to get rid of the perfectionism that's kind of ingrained in me. Mm-hmm. Let's go in my buddy, his name's Dr. Daniel Murray. He's a chiropractor, and he says that better done than perfect. And I just kept repeating that concept to myself over and over again, like a better done than perfect, better done than perfect. So just kept on grinding away at the book. But yeah, I credit James Clear, Atomic Habits, for veganism in my life, for the book in my life, and daily exercise.
Awesome. Yeah, I know, was it Ryan Holiday said that people can get pacified by the dream. Like we feel very comfortable with the dream, but very few people are willing to put in the work to get it done. So, um,
Yeah.
do you find a lot of people are kind of stuck in that where the dream is the comfort zone and so they don't feel guilty for not doing anything because they're still building the dream in their head? Like how do you get people over that hump from dream to actually working?
Yeah, great question. Um, so, and James Clear does talk about the concept of motion versus action. Like, oh, well, when you're brainstorming, that's just motion. Like, action is you actually are writing into the chapter. Or when you're planning to make sales calls for your business, that's motion. But action is actually doing it. But for me, it's always been if somebody says they have a dream, I had to stop being the friend who would just listen and ask, what are you going to do about it? And then let that uncomfortable pause stay there for a minute, then a little bit longer, let the silence do the heavy lifting, let them respond, and then begin to ask them, uh, when are you going to take the first step? What date? What time? What place? Which is actually in the book, but I was doing that before I read the book. But you just help them to crystallize the first step. And it might be somebody who's trying to get back into fitness. Well, when's your first workout going to be? Date, time, place. Even often, I have a lot of clients who miss that date that they put down, but a lot of them will hit it about 7 days later. So to me, it's about hitting it. It's not about the date and the time and the place. That was kind of arbitrary, but they had one person at least who was asking them the difficult questions that are accountability centered. And most dates that I ask about, I forget, unless I'm in a one-on-one coaching, then it's my responsibility to write the notes as we're having conversation. But most groups that I'm in, I ask people questions. I don't ask it for me to write it down. I ask it for them. So that's for me, taking it from a dream to moving into reality is getting a date, getting a time, getting a place, and then communicating that I really believe in them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the book, The Neuroscience of Winning and Losing, they talk about the importance of making sure that you have realistic dates and times. Otherwise, if you have an unrealistic date and time, your brain, it will actually hurt your self-esteem and you'll get depressed. And so, do you help clients kind of give a realistic time and time and date as far as their goals, or is that something that you just let them come up with and experience themselves?
It's another great question. So part of it is, I know if it's a client, I know we're going to have a great follow-up. So seeing them fail, it's completely okay. Like my role isn't to help them avoid failure, but it's actually more of helping them to learn from the failure. Well, as opposed to me imposing on their date and time, saying, all right, let's roll with it. Let's go. If they want to run 100 miles, over the next week, let's go. And then when I talk to them in 2 weeks and they didn't do it, my thing is, all right, let's learn from this. What did you learn? All right, then let them make the self-discovery. They shot too high. Okay, so what's the lesson for next time? Okay, well, if you're overly optimistic, like I'm one of those guys, I sat down with a coach and he asked me, what's your goals for the end of 2020? And I said, write 3 books. And he goes, 3? And that's one of my things. Like, and I'm into book number 2, using the habit of writing that I used to write book 1. And now I'm working on book 2. But being there to support them and learn from the failure, which I don't really even believe in failure really. But helping them to fail forward, to fail upward it's a big deal for me in not necessarily squashing their unrealistic action, but letting them fall and then learning from it.
Awesome. Yeah, good stuff. I know people listening right now are like, wait, I thought we were talking about leadership. We're talking about leading ourselves. This is what leading yourself looks
Right.
like.
Right.
And it's not always
Mhm.
the band of brothers with the epic music in the background charging the army. It's just, doing the small things well, excellent every single day. And so, uh,
That's right. Well, what you're saying is so on point. I was in a coaching group earlier today, and I was facilitating it, and I always try to start off those with something uplifting. So, say, what's one victory you've had with habits over the last 7 days, or what's one victory you've had in your life? So, share something good to get us going in a positive direction. So, and one of the guys, to my surprise, I had gifted him a book, and he said, my girlfriend and I have been reading your book every night to each other. And I'm just going, oh, holy cow. Like, what in the world? Like, y'all are reading my book to each other, which I didn't know. This guy didn't know I existed in April 2020 this year. He didn't know I existed. I didn't know he existed in April 2020. But a guy who came into my circle, hopped into one of my coaching groups, and then he's telling me he has my book, he's digging into it, and him and his girlfriend are catching good vibes. But think about that, where it started. It started from one person's discipline, learning from another person's passion, James Clear's passion, Atomic Habits, and now there's influence, leadership that's happening when I'm not in the room. I'm not even present. Leadership is happening with him and his girlfriend, who I've also never met. I've met him once in person, and I've never met his girlfriend. So to me, it's just mind blowing.
do you find that there's some personalities that, I don't want to say lead better, but people are more influenced by? And so you say, like, oh, well, that person is a natural born leader because they have a certain personality. Is that something that you agree with, or do you believe that leadership is purely built from the ground up?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Like, so like that outgoing crazy guy. Um, I mean, the thing about it is, so they might be influencing a few people, but sometimes their influence is negative. It's a negative influence, negative leadership, right? So they're more repelling all the introverts, saying, "I don't want to be around that guy or like that guy," right? So we've probably seen all of us seen that guy, but I think I've in my journey I've seen phenomenal extroverts as leadership, phenomenal introverts in leadership. I've seen probably personalities across all across the spectrum that have learned the skill of leadership. So they've learned the skill of influence. And that some people might be a little bit more prone to it, like people who have the personality type of like taking charge. We see these kids on the playground who are coordinating the game of tag. It's like, well, how did they even learn that? Some of that might be innate in their influence to coordinate a game at such a young age. But the skills of leadership are certainly anybody can build and add to their skill set of leadership.
Hmm. I want to talk about Leaders Eat Last, Simon Sinek's book. It's not that this book isn't talked about as much as Start With Why. I don't, for whatever reason, this is from what I've seen, but I think it's a really important book to talk about. In your opinion, where is the balance between self-sacrifice and taking care of yourself? Because when people first read that title, they get a little nervous going, well, wait a minute, if I'm not taking care of myself, then who's going to take care of me? But I also want to have a sacrificial, serving heart for the people that are following me.
Yes. Right. So to me, one of the most selfless endeavors is to have a personal growth plan as a leader, as a leader, right? So if I'm filling myself up with the best practices in across the industries, then the more filled up I am, I'm best prepared to serve the people around me. So, so this figuring out what I'm willing to sacrifice and what I'm not. I'm willing to sacrifice comfort. Like, okay, well, I'm more comfortable not getting down and whatever, in wiping some shoes, right? I've done that in a speech before where I couldn't wash their feet. You know, that's probably a little bit culturally abnormal. But I said, you know what? I could have somebody come up to the stage and get a shoe shiner and shine their shoes. Like that was uncomfortable though. So I'm in the middle of a speech and I get down on my hands and knees, and I'm saying, and the point I was making is anybody can serve if you're looking for the opportunity. But like, well, what if I'm not soaring in my current path in my journey? Well, what if I'm walking, or what if I'm crawling? Then I said, okay, I said, I'm going to show everybody what crawling looks like. And I asked somebody to go up to the stage and I shine somebody else's shoes, even from a crawling position. But the concept is simply this, that yes, leaders eat last. Yes, self-sacrifice, comfortability, but in the name of loving and serving the people. So, so would I ever sacrifice my personal development for people? No. Now, is there exceptions? I mean, if I'm personal developing on a midday run and somebody, you know, falls over, then yeah, I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to go over there and check to see if they're okay, right? And try to help them out. But for the most part, the way my schedule's built is I'm not going to sacrifice, for example, my exercise in the name of another meeting on my schedule.
It goes back to leading yourself and making sure that you're able to take care of yourself before you're able to take care of others. Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Awesome. And when someone, I imagine, I mean, I'm just guessing, but I'm sure you probably have people that have come up to you who are burnt out. Do you have kind of some advice that you give them as far as being able to help them get back on track? Because, you know, burnout's ugly, because, you know, you see someone with so much potential, so much talent, so much skill, and yet they feel like they're not able to do that anymore because they haven't been able to take care of themselves. Do you have any advice that you give someone that's in that position?
For sure. Right. My big thing is for people who have a hard time saying no to people. In my circle, again, my clients, I ask them this question: how many times did you say no this week? Because good is the enemy of the best, in that they could be saying yes to so many good things, but not things that are actually the best for them. So in that space, what's pivotal is saying yes to best, which is yeses to rest. And in rest, and I was messaging one of my clients earlier. She's an attorney, and I told her this one. You know, she's on vacation right now. I was just checking on her how vacation was going, and I reminded her that LeBron James and Michael Jordan didn't play all 48 minutes. Like, they spent time on the bench to rejuvenate. So they were getting rejuvenated now. But there's a difference between being on the bench and being in the stands. But people on the bench are getting rest to go back in the game. So somebody who's getting burnt out, it's likely they're not saying no enough. And then the most loving thing I can do to help them is ask them, how is it going saying no this week? And then maybe the questions below that are how was it? When you said no, what did it feel like? What happened? What took place? And it's reminding them, having them walk through it. The world didn't end. That relationship didn't end. Didn't sever. That they're still loved. You know, all of these fundamental things that are attached to always saying yes, but saying no, again, in the name of rejuvenation, to be able to come back later and to add significant value.
Do you see people want to become leaders because they want validation from other people? Do you see that at times?
Yeah, I do. I feel like people that are in their 30s and above, I usually don't, but people in their 20s for sure. Like I was speaking with a college student. I did an event over in Dallas, actually, at a university, and I was speaking to one of the students afterward, and then I was trying to dig in. She wanted some help, some coaching, to like kind of her trajectory, her journey, and I was asking her, like, what do you want? And then So she was ambitious. She wants to be a millionaire by 35. She wants to invest in real estate, retire by 30, all these things. It's okay, great. Now, once you're 35, then what? Okay, well, I can do whatever I want, be on the beach or whatever. And I said, have you ever spent 7 days straight on the beach? Like just did it now. So you can see if you actually like it. And I said, you might love it. And that might be your calling. I've done 7 days in Hawaii and I hated it. Like I thought this is what people told me I'm supposed to love in life. But all I wanted to do was come back and speak and encourage and motivate. And so that wasn't my thing. So anyway, I was talking to her later. We had this conversation. I was still trying to dig in and figure out her career path. She just graduated. And I was asking her about I was asking her what does she want more than anything, and she was talking about she wants a position where she's admired. I was like, okay, interesting. Okay, she wants a position where she's relied upon. And again, my thing, but things like that, I often don't hear with older people because some of them understand the burden of leadership, like in the realities of leadership and the opposition that you're in with leadership and the criticism you face in leadership. But yeah, I think it's more of the younger people who see people being admired from their limited perspective, but they don't understand all of the criticism that comes with being in the leadership game.
A book I read a couple of years ago, Leading with a Limp, the author was talking about sometimes leadership feels like you're walking through no man's land and you're getting shot by both sides.
Yes. I can attest to that. I feel like there's been roles where I'm like, I remember like one of my roles when I was a supervisor in a call center. Had that position for 5 years, and in the role, I remember every June we have our engagement scores, which is people tell you, hey, does my supervisor care about me? Am I doing what I'm passionate about or what I'm great in? And a bunch of like 10 other questions. But during that season, I remember like for whatever reason, I always had somebody popular on the team was like this acting a fool that pretty much was going toward termination. So I'm terminating these people right before the result, the engagement survey. I'm just going like, golly, like I wish I could put off this termination until after the survey so I can not look like the jerk who's is firing people. So, but then getting bad scores and then it just makes you look bad, even though when my boss would talk to my team, like they are somewhat uplifting, but in another sense, there was some shortcomings from the survey, especially after some of those terminations took place during the season of the survey.
Is there anything you would have done different in that situation looking back, or?
I don't know if it was do anything different, because I remember whenever I got bad results, I look back at my calendar and I'm looking back at sacrifices. I'm talking like when I go on vacation, I bring them back gifts. I take them out to eat. I'm talking like self-sacrifice, brother. Like I'm talking going after it to really deliver as positive as an experience as I could. But when I looked back and reflected, there wasn't necessarily anything I do differently, but I would look back and think differently, which was separate my identity from the results, which is tougher leaders often do. They associate their performance with their identity, who I am, how I perform is who I am. And there's a lot of confidence attached to my good or bad performance. So I just remind myself that, look, your identity isn't wrapped up in what the people think about you. Yes, do your best every day, but at the end of the day, you don't control what people's opinions are about you.
Awesome. Yeah, mindset's super important. And you mentioned Michael Jordan a few minutes ago. I don't know if you saw the TV show The Last Dance with Phil Jackson's interesting. He's actually I started looking at some of his books and um, just the emotional intelligence he had and him being able to lead these very strong alpha personalities. And he wasn't that intimidating looking of a guy. He'd look like somebody's grandfather, and yet here he is surrounded by these really alpha, males. Um, I don't know what your thoughts on the TV show were. Maybe you could share some thoughts on emotional intelligence and how it correlates with leadership.
Right. It was. I've read like Sacred Hoops from him from back in, I think he wrote that in the 90s. But I think he had a special way of connecting with the players and really incorporating different memorable experiences together. So so when it comes to the emotional intelligence, that's one of those where even when you listen to that documentary and you listen to different things that he would incorporate, whether it was incense or it was whatever activities of last words you want to write and we're going to light it on fire, what I was hearing in listening to his style and his practices was somebody who really tried to make special connections with each player, even if it meant letting Dennis Rodman go mid-season to Las Vegas, which is like a crazy idea. Like, and everybody was saying like, what, like that would never happen today, where a coach would just let somebody not show up to practice games and just and then come back a little bit later on. So yeah, there's something special there.
Hmm. Yeah, he didn't tell Dennis Rodman no. He's like, yes, as long as you do
Yeah,
this. And
yeah.
but,
But it seemed like it seemed like like I remember even on the Scottie Pippen segment where Jerry Reinsdorf Jerry was upset that Phil Jackson didn't do more to discipline or corral Scottie Pippen when he's insulting the GM in front of everybody. But when I was thinking about that and reflecting on that experience, it was like, it's crazy to think that your coach, if you're looking at whose side the coach is he on general manager and ownership side, or is he on the player side? Not that everything has to be us versus them, but that's very much how some of the players looked at it, as that the GM and above were against them. And Phil seemed to make it very clear that I am with you, the players. You are my primary clients and my primary people that I'm striving to serve and lead and love. And it seemed like he conveyed that he was on their side and he wasn't against them.
Hmm. And talking about emotional intelligence, I want to transition to emotional safety. I know you wrote a marriage book. Maybe you mentioned something in there. I haven't read it, but I imagine emotional safety is something that's important within a marriage, within leadership, within leading your team and organization. Has there been any ways that you've been able to create emotional safety within the different leadership capacities that you're in?
Yes, and that's it's a challenging one when it comes to well, it's not challenging in that the way my buddy puts it, he goes, you give people a parachute so they have a safe place to land, and they can be honest, they can be authentic, and they're willing to pretty much that vulnerability, which is like one of the pillars of connect with anybody. Are y'all willing to be vulnerable with one another? So the reason I said it, the challenging part is in an organization when you're leading, it's challenging because you're advocating for your people, but you're also advocating for the organization, and you're trying to help get the best out of the organization. And sometimes you're not necessarily like on the organization side, but you're trying to help people with attitudes, and you're trying to help them to control what they can control, as opposed to getting caught up in what they can't control anyway. But yeah, so I think just being a willing listener and being vulnerable, sharing about my own journey, my own life, my own shortcomings has been pillar. And then not correcting the vulnerability, like in allowing, striving as much as possible to be as accepting as possible, to be accepting, even if they shared the most horrific things. And in them sharing, even in and of itself, speaks volumes about their trust. So
I had a friend who worked at a hospital, and he kind of had a rule saying, when you're in my office and you close the door, you can say whatever you want. But as soon as we're both out of the office, we're in the general public, then you have to maintain a professional attitude and professional behavior, because stuff you vent off affects everybody in the hospital. And so I think context is super key to time and place. Context is key to when to express some attitudes.
Yes. I love that. And most of the time, those conversations, like, people are learning about that afterward, because you're addressing an attitude they brought up in a group setting or in a group chat, or something they expressed that was a negative representation of the organization and the company, and letting them know, hey, you can talk to me about it, but spreading some of the toxicity and spreading the poison is inappropriate. So.
I want to ask you about having a hard talk with someone. As a leader, you have to have hard talks with people. Do you find that the way you approach a hard talk within a company is going to be different than the way you approach a hard talk within a marriage, within a friendship, maybe another family member? Or is there kind of a overarching principle that you have with all hard talks that you have with people?
Yes. So it's interesting. I start by knowing what I want from the conversation. Like, if this goes exactly how I want, what direction is that? And so knowing that, but then also knowing that I control nobody but myself. Like, yes, I can give you a 5-tier apology structure to use in the apology that you owe me for what you said to me on Facebook or something. But fundamentally understanding that people make their own choices, and not getting caught up with controlling how they respond to it. But when it's personal, it's in some ways it's easier, because I just say, hey, look, and people know me, like, spirituality is at my core. So if me and God are having a conversation, I'll just tell them what I told, what my thoughts before, like my honest to God answers, like literally what I prayed about. Say, hey, look, this is what I'm sensing. This is what I saw. This is what I'm observing. Tell me what you think, and tell me what you're seeing. So that's a little bit easier. In the professional setting, if I'm responsible and I'm accountable for their behavior, that's a little bit different, because not only, I'm not going to use the God lingo, but I also am not looking just to express myself. I actually am looking for behavioral change to avoid further disciplinary actions. Because again, I'm held accountable in certain things you say, certain things people say in the corporate environment can lead to them losing their job. But but for me, like, I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody, I remember I had if somebody said something racially offensive, and I check to see what's the appropriate protocol for the situation. And the first protocol is to have the conversation with them and raise awareness. But if it continues, hey, we move on to that written warning, then final written warning, then termination. But anyway, but just having those conversations and being very clear, hey, being specific as possible, and And of course, in the corporate world, you chart everything. It's like, even if we didn't have the conversation, okay, we're going to have the conversation. So, hey, they said this comment on this date in this setting, and then have the conversation in a really upfront way. You know, Latin, like for me, when you're having those conversations, that's one of those times where I'll take the smile away, take the joking away. I won't laugh at the jokes. I won't really smile at all. And it's a very deliberate, somber time to have a conversation. So it's not a laughing matter. It's not a joking matter. This is a sincere, genuine call to change.
Hmm. I'm just thinking of the emotional maturity it takes to be able to do that, and to be able to remove yourself and from the situation emotionally, to be able to lead the person in the direction that they need to go. One, do want to, I know I'm, because you're a big time management guy, we're kind of getting close to the hour. Last questions I want to ask is, if you had to organize a leadership conference, I am curious about what classes you would have, who would be your guest speakers. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what your dream leadership conference would look like.
Yeah, right. Spot on. So I think some of the people on my radar, I mean, and that John Maxwell is such an easy answer, so I won't even mention him because he's just like the guy. But probably some of the other guys that stand out to me. Kid Cummings does an incredible work in the community, making an impact with the school system, with students, with prisons. I mean, he's done some phenomenal work in the community. I think he's a go-to, and he is this phenomenal storyteller. He knows how to give. I learned how to give people goosebumps from listening to him in storytelling. And I said, if I just implement the formula he uses, then it works, and it's just a crazy thing. Kit would be one. So then another guy, I love Gary Vee. I know he doesn't have the most appropriate language most of the time, and Gary Vee told me to stop listening to him, so I stopped. So I don't listen or read anything he has to say anymore, because he said that to the audience. He said, my dream is that you guys would stop listening to what I have to say and start doing it, and never go to another. My dream is for you to never go to another personal development conference again. You never listen to me speak again, and you would just actually go execute everything that I'm telling you to go do. So after that, I said, all right, I'm not listening to him anymore, but I actually do want to go do what he said to do, which is, again, that's a lot of the book, a lot of the content that I've built and distributed on socials. But yeah, so Kit, Gary Vee, I have another guy who's been a big brother to me. Tomas Martinez, another guy, probably. He owns Luxury Home Magazine San Antonio here in Texas, in Austin as well. And he's a phenomenal speaker, but he's also been a great contributor to my own growth journey. So I think those are three guys that maybe people wouldn't necessarily have in mind in their leadership conference. So Gary Vee, Tomas Martinez, and Kid Cummings.
Would there be any classes that you would think would be super important to have at this conference?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about Kid Cummings, so community impact, and something that John Maxwell talks about with leadership is you don't quite know leadership until you can influence somebody who doesn't need to follow you. Like, in other words, nonprofit world is the optimal place to train in leadership, because you have no financial incentive to motivate people to action or to a project that you're working on. But you're using other methods of motivation, but not so much, not the financial component. So I think that is huge. Naturally, I love personal growth content and what people are doing to grow in their journey. I love the 5 levels of leadership. That's one of those, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, but just going over what's positional leadership. People follow you because of your position. The level 2 is the permission. People follow you because they want to follow you. Like, that's when people are asking you for advice outside of work settings and work situations. Then the next one is production. People follow you because of what you've produced for the organization. Whether that's in the faith organization, you produce like whatever conversions, or if you're in the development, they follow you because of you produced a book. The next one is the personal development. People follow you because of what you've done for them. And the last one is the pinnacle, which is people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. But I think those are such killers about leadership. Like, again, like I can talk about them, but I also love other people to talk about how to help people think through influence, which is leadership.
Super quick. Why don't you tell us about your book? Maybe you can give a quick summary of your book and kind of what it consists of and what you hope people can take away from your new book.
Yeah. So I wrote the book in two areas. One, I tell everybody I've made more mistakes in every area of my life than anybody that I know, because that's the physical actions, that's words that I've spoken the wrong way, or the wrong time, or the wrong words chosen altogether, or even just the wrong thoughts. So I've made plenty of mistakes, but I've had successful people come around me over and over again. And just like Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues. If you focus on what successful people do, you can just emulate what they've done. So what I've done, I've taken the alphabet, A through Z, and wrote a chapter on each letter, helping with a core component of marriage, of the marriage relationship. So even when I was nearing the end, I would go back and Google like common marriage problems, and I would just try to make sure that I had some kind of topic on every article's points on the common marriage problem. So it's to help people to understand what makes a marriage thrive, what makes it rewarding, satisfying, and just learning from other people, and it's giving those principles in a way that's highly actionable for people to learn from and to implement into their marriage.
I am curious what you used for Z.
Zoom to a healthy view of boundaries.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So, and even like X is another one. You know, I put Xerox special dates to celebrate. I'm sure that doesn't actually work with grammar. My editor's gonna be like, "What is this?" But yeah, getting a little creative with the writing process and just having fun with it. But just with the goal of elevating marriages and helping them to find ways to make it better.
Awesome. Sounds good. If people want to contact you, if people want to learn more about you, where's the best place that they can, I guess, get in contact with you and learn more about what you do?
Yes. So at Strong Life Coach, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. They can email me, Derek@stronglifecoach.com. And because I am a Gary Vee fan, you could also contact me via my cell phone number, 210-412-5545. I know he has a whole texting platform, but text works too. I'm going to be offering some coaching via text soon. So that's going to open up. I already do that, but I'm going to make it a little more official with my line of business. So those ways are probably the best ways to contact me.